Good evening, Gearheads. Welcome to Speed City F1. We are live in Las Vegas. This is Jon Massengale. Sitting next to me in the booth is Bob Varsha. Bob, I am excited. This is Las Vegas. I know you're feeling a little under the weather with the cold, but you still seem pretty excited to be here.
Oh, I absolutely am, John. It's and I apologize for my voice if I cough in your ears. It wasn't intentional, but from last year to this, and last year was spectacular. This year is so much more so, and so much easier for the fans. It's less expensive for the fans. But all of the goodies that have been added this year have just come off without a hitch. And I hope I'm not jinxing anybody with the race coming up in about an hour. But, it's been fabulous. And how could we ask for a better championship scenario than to have the reigning champion and leader in the points starting next to his one and only rival on the same row?
I know. This weekend has been set up so perfectly. But again, the scene and the atmosphere of Las Vegas, I said it last night, but I think that F1 in Las Vegas is the visual marriage made in heaven. It is just spectacular seeing these cars under the lights with all of the strip, with all of the neon and everything else, and the sphere. It's just insane. It's just amazing.
It really is. And the speeds they're reaching, I think the biggest one I heard yesterday was 217 miles an hour. They're having to work for it. This place, of course, is streets, city traffic every single day, including all 3 days of the race weekend. And as a result, that plus desert dust blowing in, and we have a nice strong breeze tonight to help that process. The track is very slippery, very tricky, and all the drivers mention it.
Yeah, it's definitely a little warmer than it was last night, but we have the wind, as you mentioned it. The temperatures come up, but the wind has come up as well, and it's pretty gusty out there. I was walking through the paddock about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, and that could be a factor in the race. Mercedes has been dominant all weekend, swept P1 in every session. George Russell is on pole for the fourth time in his career, but both Lewis Hamilton and George Russell have been saying, we're good in cooler temperatures, so, don't be deceived. But now it's 10 to 12 degrees warmer than it was when they said that. And as you mentioned, we have this wind that's blowing in the drivers' faces down that long 2.2 kilometer, I think, straightaway, second longest straightaway in Formula One after Baku, Azerbaijan. It's going to be in the driver's face. It's going to change their aero setup, the braking points. Everything's going to be different. This is going to be a real high wire act, and it should be fun to watch.
Well, you're talking about the Mercedes drivers. Lewis Hamilton, I heard him say just a minute ago, he said he was riding around in the trailer as they do, and they were interviewing him, and he said, I am pinching myself looking around at this Vegas skyline. He said, it is surreal. Even Lewis Hamilton is caught up in the enthusiasm of this Las Vegas event. It's just amazing.
Yeah, he said that. He also said, I'm seeing it for the first time up on this flatbed truck, because when I'm in the race car and we're rocketing at 200 plus miles an hour down the strip, you just take no notice of these brazenly lit casinos and what have you. But, of course, you put Lewis in front of a crowd, and he's always going to say interesting things. We all hope for Lewis in these last three races of his career in a Mercedes, that he can pull off something special. He thought he had pole yesterday, but he overcooked turn 14, which is where you come off that back straightaway and go through some twisty bits before you make your way around to start-finish. And he was kicking himself. He could have had pole, he thinks, but it wasn't to be because he went off.
Yeah, and of course his teammate, George Russell, ended up with the pole. But we're sitting on the corner of Koval and Harmon right at turn 17. And the cars come through here, Bob, and we must be 20, 25 feet is all we are.
Oh, yeah.
And you can literally, they shake the table when they come pounding through here. And I think they're approaching 200 miles an hour right here.
Yeah, I'd say it's 180, 190 mile an hour corner for sure. And it's like watching the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds come by on the deck. I mean, they are so fast and so loud. It's amazing.
That is a great comparison, because I've been sitting here shooting my own little personal videos all weekend long of the cars right in front, and they come by so quickly. and our booth window's only about 5 feet, and they're coming by so fast you can't even tell who the drivers are in a car. You can tell the color of the car, but you can't tell the driver. Well, I hear Chris Medland's microphone. He's out in the paddock. Chris, how are you, buddy?
I'm very well, thank you. I like to defend myself sometimes, and I was here on time, but nobody sent me the link to join you. So I was just wandering around like a lonely child looking for his parents. But I am now alive and kicking. And Bob was very close there, by the way, with his estimation of speeds. I saw a great bit of footage from Formula One where they got local cops to speed gun at the final corner. 205 miles an hour was one of the speed gun registers of an F1 car coming through that final corner yesterday.
We're sitting at 205.
I knew
Holy
it.
Mackerel.
I knew it. Jonathan was saying maybe 180, 190, and I was like, there's no way, because the sparks from underneath the car are happening literally right out my window. And I think the difference is you guys' booth, for y'all doing the PA, it's about another couple hundred feet,
couple
maybe.
hundred feet further along towards start finish.
I think in front of my window they've been doing over 200 miles an hour. It's really you don't have a program monitor here in your little studio, because we make a little game of it when we see the cars approaching turn 17. Yeah.
We look up and see them go by, and then you look down and they head across start finish.
The latency is pretty good. I noticed that in y'all's booth. It's almost real time. Well, Chris, what's it like in the paddock? I was out there maybe 30, 40 minutes ago, and it was pretty packed.
Yeah, it's still pretty busy, but a lot of people are actually watching the big screens. There's like a pre-race show going on at the moment. And Ludacris is on stage, and it's really getting the atmosphere going. But what I've found, and we've seen this and talked about it on the show before in terms of the way F1 has evolved in this country, but so many of the guests here are kind of lining the stairways and the walkways across the paddock from the hospitality units to the garages, because they want to get a glimpse of drivers, team bosses, anyone working in a team, to get a selfie, to get an autograph, whatever it may be. But they are spotting team members. And it wasn't that long ago where anyone in here wasn't really doing that. They were just here having a good day out, but they weren't that bothered about the F1 personnel and the sport itself so much. It was just a fun event. So now we're seeing kind of a mix of both here. It's really, really quite cool, actually, to see. But, the atmosphere definitely ramping up. And I think it's also helps that it's not quite so cold today. So people are kind of hanging out and they're not so wrapped up. Fewer blankets on show.
Yeah, it's actually been very cold. It's warmed up a little bit each night. But tonight, I was out without a jacket even, John, just a long-sleeve shirt. But
2 days ago, it was 47, 48 degrees here.
Yeah.
And now it is, according to my watch, which I cannot read because I don't have my glasses on, it's 64 degrees.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, it feels pretty comfortable. Chris, do you have the celebrity list? I haven't seen it yet, but I know that there's probably a zillion out here.
Yeah, I can't lie. I can't remember them off the top of my head because it was so long. Now, when I say so long, it was 52 pages was the latest one.
What?
I got sent.
Yeah, exactly.
52 pages. And now each page generally is one or two celebs with a bio and a picture. But maybe 3 they get on there. It was a big, big list. I've seen John Legend already today. There's a guy called Rory McIlroy I'm hoping to bump into on the grid.
Yes.
There's, like I said, Ludacris is out there. Gordon Ramsay's at every race these days, isn't he? He's walked through the paddock already. I've seen Kevin Hart wandering around earlier on as well. I'm trying to remember them all off the top of my head. Who's been
Actor
Seth Rogen,
Terry Crews.
Terry Crews has been with RB. There's loads.
There's a famous comedian whose name I can't remember right now. Jenny McCarthy, who's been arm in arm. I feel like I'm doing the Hollywood Reporter here. With,
it's pretty cool, though, to see all the celebs.
With Mark Wahlberg's brother, Danny Wahlberg.
Yeah.
It's just as you come in the paddock, off to your right is the large area where the driver's corral, where drivers go after sessions. They're interviewed by the press. Next to that, they erected this huge backdrop and a red carpet and all sorts of lighting. Everybody's lined up, and I thought, wow, the driver's going to come in that way? No, that's for the celebrities, the VIPs. It's incredible. And I think you can look up the celebrity guests on your computer. I think Johnny Green did it by just putting in your browser, a celebrity list at the Las Vegas Grand Prix.
I think you can. But, man, I know it's that way every year. But, well, Bob, you touched on it a minute ago, but we got to talk about where we are in the championship because here we are with Verstappen and Norris, neck and neck. And the way this championship needs to break down is that Norris needs to outscore Verstappen by 3 points to take this another race. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that goes. And then the constructors, McLaren leads Ferrari by 36, who leads Red Bull by 13. So this is really coming down to the wire. And all I care about is I really just want the Drivers' Championship to go one more race. That's really all I want.
Yeah, but I've been touting the Constructors' Championship all day. Nobody wants to listen to me. They only want to know about the Drivers' Championship. Okay, fine. But look past the Verstappen-Norris battle, and you've got 3 drivers battling for 6th place. I'm doing this off the top of my head, which is, an echo chamber. Covered by 5 points for 11th in the title chase. They're not going to win a championship, but, they're going to score points. And a lot of the contracts are based on that. Look at the battle in 11th place. Who's down there?
Yeah, down in 11th, you got Hulkenberg with 31, Tsunoda with 28, Gasly with 26, Stroll with 24, Ocon with 23.
Right. Now go over to the Constructors' Championship and look at that same midfield battle between Alpine and RB and Haas.
Yeah.
Same deal.
Yeah, it's very similar. That's true. I'm having trouble getting that to work right, actually. But, yeah, that's actually one of the big battles, too, is that battle for that 6th position. It's crazy. And, with the recent developments with Alpine and the double podium putting themselves back into position.
Yes.
I was thinking that Haas might look a little stronger. But go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say 5 points between those 3 teams now with Alpine, Haas, and RB.
Yeah.
And, I was with you. I kind of thought, well, Alpine are maybe going to struggle to score too many more points than that. And that was a huge one-off result that's put them in that place, but Haas could maybe chase them down. But then Pierre Gasly goes and pulls out a lap like yesterday. Yes. Car 3rd on the grid. And you suddenly think, well, hang on, Alpine could score huge again today and really move out of reach if they get it right today. So it's remarkable how it's turned around from them. And Ollie Oakes, actually, earlier this weekend, speaking to him, was saying, yes, we have a top 10 car now. This isn't that we just lucked into the result in Brazil and we just luck into the odd good qualifying performance. Our car on raw pace is capable of qualifying and finishing in the top 10 now because you've got the top 4 teams where Mercedes were kind of at the end of that top 4, but Red Bull, Ferrari and McLaren as well. But then Aston Martin have disappeared, haven't they, really? So 5th is a position that's up for grabs for any of those teams. Like, they're not going to get there in the constructors' standings, but they are able to outpace the 5th place team. And that opens up points. So Alpine think they can score at every round.
Yeah, it's amazing that where we're at with that, because it was just not that long ago when it looked like Haas might run away with it. So, and Casey, if you've got this ready, we've got a clip from Gasly after qualifying yesterday, and he sounded pretty excited. So let's hear from Pierre Gasly. 1 sec, we'll grab it for you.
It is incredible. I must say, we would have never imagined to be fighting for the top 3. I felt good in the car all weekend. Going into quali, we knew Q3 was on the table. Tried to build it up through Q1, Q2. Going to that Q3 with only 1 set of new tires, so we're fighting with the Haas and AlphaTauri. And on that last lap, I must have really managed to nail it. It's low grip, a lot of sliding, playing with the walls was a couple of very fine margins, but crossing the line, I knew, okay, I've put on a special lap, but I didn't expect to be, ahead of the McLaren, ahead of Max, and all of that. So when they came on the radio to say we were P3, it was a very, very, very good feeling, and very special lap. So a lot of positivity.
Confidence around here is everything. It seems like you've got buckets of it around here. What is possible tomorrow?
Tomorrow is, so all weekend I knew quali lap, I knew I could pull something off. I felt comfortable pushing the car and with the sliding and these low grip conditions. Last year we had a good quali, and Sunday was a lot tougher with the graining. I suffered a lot, so the past 2 weeks I've worked a lot more with the team going into this weekend to really try to make sure we're on top of it, even yesterday, and really try to prepare myself for tomorrow. And hopefully it pays off. It's going to be a tough one for everybody to stay on top of that graining, but it usually brings opportunities. Obviously, we're on the good side of it.
Great stuff. Good luck
Thank
tomorrow.
you.
Yeah, Gasly, I looked last year. He started 4th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's good around here.
Yeah, he didn't. I think he finished just outside the points last year. But all right, well, let's get our first break in real quick. You're listening to Speed City live from Las Vegas. Back after a quick break. All right, YouTubers. I got to meet the guy who did the Saison 7 calendar, the Saison73.com calendar. I've actually got it in my hand, and it is very cool, and we appreciate them advertising with us. And
his name is Nazir Hamid.
Yeah.
Great guy, travels to all the races. He's made his money in the hotel business. Die-hard fan, great historian of Formula One, and they put this calendar together every year, and it's just great shots of the Jim Clarks and the Juan Fangios and the Jackie Stewarts. And
what a perfect gift, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a 2025 calendar. He does it every year. This year is it's called the Gallery of Champions. This year he has a different theme every year. It's called Motorsport Memories Calendar. But yeah, you can check them out and get this at Saison73.com, SAISON 73.com. Chris, it sounds loud over there. Where are you?
I've just headed into the pit lane, so I'm walking down the pit lane to get onto the grid because I'll admit, it's so dark in the paddock, and I think there's so many celebs here hiding away that it didn't actually feel like there was anyone to grab. And I saw a number of team members heading across to their garages anyway, so I was like, I'm going to get onto the grid early. So I've just made it onto the grid itself, where it's nice and bright, so you can actually see some stuff.
Well, your signal is great, by the way.
It's very cool.
Famous last words.
What's that, Chris?
Famous last words. You know, drop off as soon as we.
Yeah, I know. I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, absolutely. But I know you're right, Bob. The paddock is amazing.
There is a free sushi table. There is a free water. Evian has its own special giveaway. There are numbers, free coffee. There's a media center now where we can all grab sandwiches and stuff. They've really thought of everything this year. And it's a very cool place to hang out.
Yep. All right.
That
here we go.
Sushi setup.
Hi guys, this is Pierre Gasly, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Nice job, Casey. Where'd you find that? Gasly bringing us back. I want to talk about George Russell. We mentioned he's on pole. This is the 3rd pole for him this year. And he, unlike all the rest of us, said that they are not attributing the cold temperatures. And when asked about, the success they had, he said, I just don't think that's it. He said, I'm not sure why we're fast here, but he did not chalk it up to the cool temperatures, which the Mercedes has done so well. But man, you're right, Bob. You mentioned earlier that the Mercedes had looked so strong, and it really is a shame that Lewis Hamilton made that mistake, because I thought, they were 1-2 in a couple of the practices, and I think maybe 1-3 in FP3, but it would have been really kind of cool to see to see Hamilton on pole, but Russell up there as well.
Well, they hand out the points in about an hour, and Lewis, he is smiling, he looks confident, and he is one of the best all-time overtakers in Formula One. So I would imagine he can, do away with a whole bunch of those 9 cars ahead of him before the checkered flag flies.
Chris, what were you going to say?
Actually, I'm walking towards you guys. I'm heading towards your broadcasting booth at the final corner, because I thought, well, let's see each other for once while we're on air. Because I can walk back far enough on the grid. Yeah, this grid, because it's so small.
Oh, we're losing you now, Chris. You've walked out of the cell zone there. But anyway, we were just talking about Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, and the Mercedes, and
I love it when, you propose a well-thought-out reason that something happens, and then the person it happens to says, no, that's not it. But they don't offer you an alternative reason that also makes sense, which always makes you think, yeah, you just don't want to agree with me, do you?
Or he doesn't want to give away company secrets. That's something about the cool temperatures.
Exactly.
Say, we only got 3 races left, George. Come on, you can say it.
Yeah, well, that was a great point was made about the graining of the tires and the marbling across the tread, and temperature contributes a lot to that. But these drivers have the chance to slide these cars, and I think in their heart of hearts they dig it.
Yeah,
this is
who
fun.
doesn't?
Right.
Who does? It's not fast, as they always like to say, but it's a lot of fun to slide the cars. I watched the replay of Turn 1 last year, and I saw Alonso slide straight up, and I think he bumped into K-Mag. I can't remember who it was, but he just looked completely out of control because he couldn't stop the car because the tires were slick on this slick surface because it was cooler last year at this time.
And we keep talking about how fast this track is, concrete walls everywhere. We have had 3 interruptions of on-track activity, 2 of which were mechanicals, one for Lance Stroll, once for Alex Albon in the Williams, and only one massive, catastrophic accident, and that was Franco Colapinto, who just demolished a Williams. He and Alex have demolished 5 cars in the last 3 races.
Well, that crash by Colapinto was 50 Gs.
Yep.
I mean, that's a stunning number. You would think that would just be a fatal accident. Now, we see this in Formula One from time to time, and they made him go get a medical test and get cleared for this race, and the team did a heroic effort to get the car ready. So he's going to be racing tonight. He'll be starting from pit lane. But that crash, that on the television, if you saw it, when he hit the barriers, he literally moved those giant concrete barriers.
Yeah, 2,000 pounds apiece.
Yeah, and he moved those several inches in that tiny little race car, relatively speaking. Actually,
more than a foot, because the drone overhead could see where the wall just kind of, it was like a highway exit for a while. He has a car ready to go, but that's a totally built from the ground up, backup monocoque. And the Williams team has pretty much used up its supply of spare parts. They're on their last gearbox. Everybody's down to the end of the season. You can't crash cars. You just won't be able to repair them. And Williams is first in line when it comes to spare parts problems. But it was a huge hit the wall on the left side, which bent his left front wheel, which, of course, steered the car directly across the track, billiard ball style. And, it was a huge hit.
That was interesting. Well, Chris, I think we've got you back now.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of those annoying things. I can hear you guys fine, but you can hear me, as you say, clearly not allowed to get that close to each other on a grid. But a good point well made on Williams. And not only that, what's remarkable is that car was so heavily damaged, they had to change the chassis, but they had to strip off everything that they could that was usable from the...
Hang in there, Chris.
Yeah, I think we lost you again.
Then they had to find the rest of the spare parts that they had, or the ones that they had just lying around, essentially, and rebuild it back up. And they did all that overnight without breaking the curfew. So they basically laid it out like a jigsaw, worked out what they were going to do, checked that they had enough stuff, and could commit overnight to rebuilding that car. And then they just had to wait and see if Franco would pass the protocols and be fit to race today. So a heck of a job by those mechanics.
Yeah, and that hit was so large. Colapinto was examined last night, but he also had to be re-examined this morning before they would clear him to go drive. And I've heard him speak a few times since then. He seems to be just fine, but that's got to be a harrowing experience for a race driver to take that kind of a hit and then get in the car 24 hours later.
Well, I'm just looking down the grid. I want to hear if we've got a clip from Carlos Sainz, because he is starting second in the Ferrari. And, I think they had high hopes coming into this race. But, we don't know what's going to happen here because it is Vegas. And I mean that because not only because it's Vegas and it's a wild card, pun intended, but just because of the way the track is and the temperature and everything. But we've got a clip from Carlos Sainz. Let's hear from him.
Yeah, it must have been a good lap, to get within a tenth of George and that Mercedes that they've been clearly dominating all weekend and get within a tenth. having a healthy margin behind, I think must have been a good lap. At the same time, it puts us in a good position, for tomorrow to try and go for the win. Everything open, too many variables to predict what's going to happen tomorrow, but at least we put ourselves in the best position to go for it.
I know that you didn't get to start from P2 last year. At least this year you do. When you kind of look at the unknowns going into the race, no one's run the hard tyre. The one running long ones has been tough. Do you think will make the difference tomorrow for you to try and get that win?
I think trying to control the graining in the medium tyres and then switching on the hard quickly and having a good grip with the hard. I think this year we haven't been particularly good on harder tyres because our car is really good on tyres, and this could play a bit against us. But at the same time, our pace seemed good on yesterday on the long run. So optimistic that we can still get that win.
Yeah, Ferrari has been good. They've been fast, just not fast enough. But that's okay if they're getting good performance out of their tires. I think I'm picking Carlos Sainz to win this race.
Are you?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, God. Early with your prediction there, Bob. Although I think a lot of people do side with you on that. This was a track we expected to suit Ferrari. And Ferrari were talking it down in the sense of they thought it might actually be too cold this weekend for them. Last year, they were really strong here because they actually could heat their tyres up very easily. And that was a weakness in most places. They would overheat their tyres. But this weekend, with the lower temperatures, 12 months ago, they were then saying, okay, well, by being able to heat those tyres up, we get the performance when other people are struggling. Fast forward to this weekend's race, and because they've resolved that weakness at most venues, it actually means that they thought they might struggle to turn their tyres on to get grip out of them here. So the fact they've got both cars in the top four, so close to what George Russell managed to do, I think does bode very well. And as we've already mentioned on the show, it is that bit warmer today. The track has gripped up that bit more as well. So I think it kind of moves a little bit closer to the Ferrari window, the conditions we have right now. But something I wanted to bring up very quickly based on when you guys were talking about sliding around and low grip, and I disappeared into the ether at that point and couldn't speak to you. But the wind we've got now that's picked up is a tailwind into turn 1 and a tailwind into turn 5, the two first big stopping points on the track. And when you've got all 20 cars on the first lap trying to gain positions, and they're going to be trying to hit their braking point in and amongst so much traffic, I think we could again see incidents on the first lap because of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. A tailwind going into a braking zone like that, you could have some oversteer if they hitting the brakes and trying to turn, and then the wind at the back could lift the back of the car up. That could be interesting.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton said earlier he thought since he's so low to the ground, he thought maybe the walls of this track would dissipate a little bit of that wind. That he may just be whistling past the graveyard on that one, but he is. Lost my train of thought here. The wind is something they have not seen in any of the previous practices. It was very calm and very cold for 1, 2, and 3 free practices. Now it's a whole new set of conditions with about 12 degrees more ambient temperature and a wind that I'm guessing is bursting to 20, 25 miles an hour at times.
Yeah, it felt like it in the paddock a while ago. Mm-hmm. And you talk about the Ferrari sitting at second and fourth in the starting grid. That could play massive implications into the Constructors' Championship because the points are so tight right there. And if you have, if they just finish where they are, I don't have the math on that, but it's big. There's 36 points between Ferrari and McLaren, but they're ahead of both cars right now. That might be enough for them to catch them if they finish where they're at. Yeah. And Bob, if your prediction comes true, that would probably happen.
Yeah, we could see the Constructors' Championship lead change hands here tonight, as well as crowning a driver's champion.
Yeah, what were you going to say, Chris?
Well, if they finish where they are right now, they'll score 30 points in total, won't they? 18 for being second, 12 for being fourth. So it wouldn't be enough in one go where they are, so they need to move forward and get a win. But as Oscar Piastri's just come past me into his grid slot and Lando Norris following him in on the grid, we're quite a long way back with those two McLarens, 6th and 8th. Yeah. And don't forget that we've been used to them being quick in the race, and they think they'll be good on the hard compound tyre, which we're likely to see in the second part of the race. But behind Oscar Piastri, directly behind him, is Lewis Hamilton. And he was looking so quick this weekend until qualifying, until Q3, essentially. So they've got a threat from behind as well as in front of them. They're not just looking forward. Yuki Tsunoda splits two McLarens, and he could be a bit of a wild card, but ahead of that, you've obviously got Max Verstappen, not going to make it easy for Lando Norris alongside him. So I think you're right. I think Ferrari see this as a huge opportunity because Verstappen and Red Bull surely are going to be looking at, can we get this title won? And that means they'll pay attention to what Lando Norris is doing most of all. Therefore, ahead of them, less important than what's directly behind them. And that might give Ferrari a little bit of a chance to get away and score some heavy points.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get a quick break in. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Red Bull car, and we're going to talk about the top speed and the wing modifications that have gone on this weekend. You're listening to Speed City F1 live from Las Vegas. Back after these messages. All right, let's just jump over to YouTube and see what the boys and girls are talking about over there. Whoa, there's lots of comments. I got to keep scrolling. Looks like everybody's excited about Vegas. All right, let's see. Andy P., Saturday nights are right for fighting. Mike Bowles is in the stands. That's right, Mike's in the stands. He said, I can hear Ludacris blowing it out. Oh, that's funny.
Now we can hear Johnny Green, who's here on the grid right now, getting very animated. I can see on the big screen.
When is Johnny Green not animated?
That is very true.
Very true.
Oh, that's so true. All right, let's see. Rolling down here. Andy P., downright balmy compared to last night. Yeah, it is. It definitely feels very, very different here. And the humidity's up a little bit. Let's see. Bill Ricker says, Eastern Standard Time isn't too bad for European 2 p.m. races, but when Las Vegas gives a breakfast race, it's a weird time. Yes, it is a very weird time. Weird for everybody. Carlos Sainz was talking about his schedule where he gets up, he sleeps till noon or 1, has breakfast at 2, lunch at like 7 or 4, and then dinner at 7. It's and I'm doing the same thing. It's very, very strange.
And he goes to bed at 4 in the morning or something like that?
Yeah. Well, we've all been going to bed 2 or so, 1 or 2 at least.
Yep. And then we all get on the airplane and go to Qatar.
Yeah.
And lose a day on the way. I really don't know how these teams and all the personnel, including our own Chris Medland, do it.
Let's see. Alex is having pre-race pancakes and hot chocolate. That sounds like some comfort food. That would have been good last night in the cold here. I can't tell you how cold it really was. And it was extremely cold. It seemed colder than the 40-something it was.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming back.
I'm George Russell, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back. We're live in Las Vegas at the corner of Koval and Harmon Avenue, otherwise known as Turn 17, where we're watching the cars go by. Hopefully this evening we'll see them over 200 miles an hour right outside our booth again. But Chris Medland, I want to ask you about the modifications that have been going on in the Red Bull garage. There was all the crazy rumors flying around about them forgetting to pack a wing. Well, and we had Christian Horner on the show last night, and he dispelled that myth. But there have been modifications going on, them trying to get the car right, aren't they?
Yeah, they've taken parts of the rear wing off, but they could. The beam wing has been reduced. They've taken off the gurney flap, I believe. They've also just ground it down, the top part of it, as much as they can. But this choice by Red Bull, and Max Verstappen spoken about it when he was speaking last night, because he says they basically throw away 2 race weekends a season by not developing a low down rear wing for this race. But and also for Monza's, the other one you would use it. The reason though that they don't do that is because of the cost cap and because of development time. Don't forget, Red Bull, as the defending constructors champions, get less development time than anyone else. So they have to pick their battles. They have to work out where are they going to spend that money, where they're going to spend that time, and what's the value going to be. And they felt for 2 low downforce tracks, they could kind of negate that with how they perform elsewhere. Now, if Max Verstappen becomes a 4-time world champion this season, which looks likely, you'd say generally got it right. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a weekend when that happens. At the same time, it'll be much stronger next weekend in Qatar at a high downforce circuit, and we probably won't be talking about the rear wing. But I think what we'll see today will be that Red Bull will be struggling to overtake cars in a straight line, and certainly not so easy for them to defend against cars that are coming up behind them. If for example, if you manage to get yourself through strategy ahead of quicker cars, I don't see Verstappen or Perez managing to hold those positions. I think they are going to be in trouble. So they're just going to have to hope that their raw pace in the corners and across the race stint is good enough, because they can't drive a defensive race with this car setup.
No, they absolutely cannot. In fact, Verstappen was saying in practice, he said, the car is just undrivable. Mm-hmm. If I keep trying to drive it, I'm going to crash it. And then, of course, they took the chainsaw to the rear wing, for whatever reason, and suddenly it was transformed. And
suddenly he went to the top of the timesheet.
Yeah, right. Well, they also, I think, had a different front wing, too. But whenever you start messing with the wings, you run the risk of throwing the car out of balance. And that may have been the problem that Sergio and Max were complaining about, is that the car was unbalanced. But, either way, there was more Max magic when he put the car. I mean, he went right to the top of the timesheets, but then, got knocked down to his current starting position of fifth.
Well, we have a clip from Max Verstappen that was after qualifying yesterday, and where he talks about this, and he doesn't get too in-depth, but let's hear from Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I mean, we're just a bit too slow. We have been struggling to get the tires to work over a lap, and we are too slow on the straights as well, especially in qualifying. Well, you can see our rear wing, it's trimmed down quite a lot, but of course around the DRS flap, so when we open DRS, of course we don't get the gains like others do, and that makes it, of course, a bit more complicated around here. But that's our own fault. We know that's a compromise that we have. But yeah, nevertheless, I tried to do the best I could. It was quite close still for P3. There's little details that could have been a bit better maybe, but overall happy with the laps. Yeah, it was not much more in it.
How tough do you think tomorrow is going to be, given what you were saying about the wing and the tyres and just trying to keep them up?
I think tomorrow the wing hopefully is a little bit more normal, because normally, of course, you don't use the DRS every lap, so then it's less of an issue. I think it's a bit of a question mark how the tires are going to behave for us, because for me, at least from my side, both of my long runs were not particularly great. I hope tomorrow is going to be a little bit better, but we'll see tomorrow.
Right, from one world champion to another world championship caliber sportsman, I've got Rory McIlroy here with me. Rory, we were just hearing from Max Verstappen, who can go win a world championship. You've been used to high pressure on golf courses. A little calmer to your job.
I said to my friend here, I shouldn't be in the driving range, go play and have it's a full atmosphere. And Vegas, a part of that schedule is huge. Especially the expansion of F1 in America. It's really cool. The glitz, the glamour, all of it. It's cool to be a part of.
Well, part of the Alpine investment group as well, who are looking very good this week. I suppose that Pierre Gasly in the top three.
Yeah, Pierre's got a great chance tonight. See what happens. Esteban not too far away from the points either. So, too good for the guys to get some more points, climbing up the board a little bit.
And what got you hooked on F1? What really sold it to you to get involved?
I've always been a fan of F1 ever since I was a kid. And, the Alpine opportunity came up, and I just think with the popularity of F1, especially in the United States, it just seemed like a pretty good opportunity to get involved with. And, it's sort of it's a nice extra to be able to come to the races and experience it.
Well, you won the race to Dubai last weekend. You're going to get to party a bit here if there's a podium for Alpine tonight too.
Absolutely. I would love that.
Well, enjoy it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very
much. Nice, Chris.
And I just had this thought. You're Rory McIlroy. You play a game where as soon as you step up to the ball, everybody has to be quiet. And you heard him shouting to make himself heard over Will Buxton doing his grid walk for one thing, but you've got helicopters overhead, you got the PA, you got the crowds. It's it's got to be a very different experience for Rory.
That's pretty cool, Chris, that you got to talk to him, because he just won the tournament last weekend.
Well, right by yeah, he did. He won the race to Dubai last weekend. It was a big title for him. He won the tournament to win that race to Dubai, so that's the ranking start season he won in the World Tour. But yeah, this is so loud. You've got cars firing up, you've got the music blaring, you've got speed, you're getting announcements about where the team is, and it's just actually headed towards the front. He didn't see me, but his face, he hates to be in so much noise and basically you can't see beyond one car. You can see one car in front of you and you can't see anything else. You can see this is how the themselves can compete. Truly remarkable.
Yeah, we're losing you a little bit there, Chris, but Bob, Varsha, I know you're going to have to leave a little bit early to get back on the PA. You want to give us the rundown of the full grid? The Varsha grid, as we call it.
Happy to do so. Me. Okay, on row one, George Russell won the battle for pole as driver after driver, hoping to be last man on track to post a hot lap. Each one quicker than the man ahead of him. It was Gasly, it was Sainz, and finally it was Russell who came out of the final corner in a shower of sparks and grabbed his fourth career pole, third this year for Mercedes. Starting next to him, Carlos Sainz in the first of the Ferraris. And I'll say it again, they've been sneaky quick all weekend, never leading a session, but always right there. I'm picking Sainz. Row two, Pierre Gasly, the star of qualifying. I mean, all of a sudden, the team that started 19th and 20th on the grid in Bahrain way back when is suddenly on the podium in the rain in Brazil, and Gasly starting P3 here in Las Vegas. Next to him, Charles Leclerc in the second Ferrari. And we all know what Leclerc can do if there's chaos down at the first corner. We'll get to that in a moment. No, we'll get to it right now. Moving on to row three, Max Verstappen starts his Red Bull alongside his only rival for the Drivers' Championship, Lando Norris, in the McLaren. So what do you do if you're Max Verstappen? Do you risk trying to edge Lando Norris off at turn one like you did last year and you've done so many times already this year? Or do you just stay close to him? All he has to do is finish ahead of Norris or roughly one place behind him, and it's all over. We'll have to wait and see what he chooses to do. Norris, for his part, says, the champion was decided back at the beginning of the season when Verstappen won 7 of the first 10 races, and he may be right. We move on to row 4, Yuki Tsunoda. You know, all I can say is the happy little Japanese guy who everybody wants to go out to dinner with because apparently Yuki can be very entertaining, and who also picked up about $4,000 at the gambling tables, even though he admitted he doesn't know how to gamble. I mean, that's the kind of luck that leads to victories in a race like this. And RB, remember, is in the middle of that titanic battle for 6th in the Constructors' Championship. Next to him, Oscar Piastri in the second McLaren, who's been remarkably confident all weekend, even though he hasn't really
But
been
I've got
producing.
Fred here with me while Ferrari are preparing their 2 cars right now here on the grid. And Fred, second and fourth, is that kind of what you were expecting coming into this weekend, or were you hoping you'd be a bit quicker?
No, I think that so far we struggle a little bit in quali from the beginning of the season, or at least more than in the race. And I think last year we were in pole, but we finished P2. That would be better to do the opposite today.
I was going to say, you look like you've got a strong car in race trim, and George Russell, Mercedes don't always keep up that pace. But how important will it be for you to get to the front early, do you think?
Yeah, but the reality of Friday is not always the reality of the Sunday, mainly on this kind of track. Conditions are also different with the wind, and we'll have to see today what.
Okay, well, I think the answer's about to start, so thank you, Fred.
And who introduced Boys to Men who are performing our national anthem? I did.
Oh, nice.
Okay, I mentioned Oscar Piastri. He's quietly confident, so we'll see what he can do and what McLaren's plan is to defend their lead in the Constructors' Championship. On row 5, Nico Hülkenberg, another great qualifying run for the German as he runs out the string with the much-improved Haas team in the middle of that fight. Next to him, Lewis Hamilton, who, as we mentioned earlier, thought he had pole until he went off at turn 14, trying just that little bit too hard.
It was a shame.
Yeah, but Hamilton, you can count on him to come forward. P11, Esteban Ocon, who seems as happy as his teammate Pierre Gasly with the way the Alpine is running right now. And he also has to be pretty chuffed about the way the Haas team that he's going to next year is running. So Ocon starts 11th next to Kevin Magnussen in the second. Haas just missed moving out of Q2, making it 2 Haases in Q3 once again. On row 7, Zhou Guanyu starts 13th in the first of the Kick Saubers. And, where's Zhou Guanyu been all year?
This is best of the year.
Absolutely. It's got to be. And there are no grid penalties. Well, there is one, his teammate. We'll get to that as soon as I cough up a hairball. Let's see here. Starting 14th, Franco Colapinto, who absolutely demolished Williams and almost himself in qualifying yesterday. I mean, if you can find that video of that crash, it was something else.
And he'll be starting from the pit lane because of that, because of the engine time and the repair time.
Yeah, all the repair and changes and whatnot. 15th, timing in 15th, Liam Lawson in the second RB, who are in a pretty good position, I'd say, to have an impact on that battle in the Constructors' Championship. Starting 16th, Sergio Perez, who once again failed to get out of Q1 and told the press afterward there is a fundamental flaw in this car. Maybe so. Starting 17th on row 9, Alex Albon, ironically outqualified by his young teammate Colapinto before he crashed. And starting 18th that was Fernando Alonso, ALO as opposed to ALB. Fernando Alonso is starting 17th as poor Aston Martin seems to be in pretty full retreat at this point, just trying to run out the string.
Not good for them right now.
No, not at all. Next to him is the aforementioned Alex Albon in 18th, so he's even further back behind his teammate than I thought he was. Final row, Valtteri Bottas, who took a 5 grid spot penalty for a battery change earlier in the weekend, and Lance Stroll, who had a total electric meltdown in practice. The team did a great job to get the car out for qualifying, but he wasn't able to get it up to speed to advance out of Q1.
Oh, that was scary. All right, well, thank you, Bob. Varsha, I know you've got to run to go get on the microphones, and we're going to go to a break. You're listening to Speed City live from Las Vegas. Back after these messages. You good?
Yeah. That grid is getting
Okay, we're live on YouTube. You got to run, Bob? Okay. Chris, let's do a mic check. I hear the DJ music, sort of.
Yeah, it's so loud behind me. But yeah, I've got you loud and clear. So hopefully you've got me just as clearly.
Yep, actually really good.
Good. Yeah, they're starting to thin out a bit. So I'm going to try and use that to get Soto, but I'm not sure because he got pulled away to do F1 TV, and now Sky are hovering. So they might get him before I do.
All right, let's see. Oh, no, there's the YouTube. I thought I closed the tab. Let's see what's going on, boys and girls. All right. Man, we got a lot of comments. Hard to keep up. David Lawrence is here. Hey, David. Mario Isola just told Martin Brundle on Sky that the grid tires should be good for 1 stop, no issues. Okay. Kevin Kelly said earlier he was saying a 2-stop. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Condolences, David. I saw I think I tweeted at you. I'm really sorry to hear about your dad. Really sorry. That is very sad. And condolences from the whole Speed City gang here. Let's see. Yeah, David says, boys to men playing performing the national anthem. He said at an F1 race was not on my 2024 bingo card. Yep, I agree, David.
How long we got left in the break? I might get Soto in a sec.
What do you got, Casey? 60? 30? Okay, good. Chris, I'll just go straight out to you.
All right, I might have missed it, but we'll see.
Hello to everyone, this is Gunther Steiner, this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, we're live in Las Vegas. Let's go straight out to Chris. He's out on the grid, and he is
brilliant
looking for
timing,
Toto Wolff.
John. Brilliant timing. I've got Toto Wolff right in front of me. And Toto, you've been doing lots of media right now because you're on pole position. Can you win this race with George Russell today?
I would hope so. There's a few factors that are for us, a few against them. Guys in the dirt, quick when it's cold, and it's still a bit cold. But on the other side, we're lacking straight line speed on the back straight, and that could fight us badly.
Well, it's going to be fascinating, though, because a number of teams are lacking straight line speed, Red Bull in particular. But how's this weekend gone from your point of view in terms of the whole event? And then how special would it be to win here for Mercedes?
We won every session, or we've been ahead every session, so that is good. I like it so far.
Thank you, Toto.
We're ahead of everybody in every session. I like it so far. Yes, I can't blame you, Toto. Hey, Chris, I was looking at Checo. He's starting 16th, like Bob just mentioned. That is the 4th time this year. That is his most frequent position to qualify. 16th. That. Speaking of 2024 bingo cards, I'm sure that's not what he wanted on his this year. That is really a bad number, isn't it?
God, terrible. It really does not reflect well at all. I was actually in the print pen and TV pen after qualifying when he was knocked out early, and the sphere graphic that appeared of him giving himself the thumbs down as he was going past the sphere for being knocked out Q1. Really upset Red Bull, actually. They said, they were like, that wasn't funny. That's pretty disrespectful. Well, all of the teams, all the drivers did these content sessions, captured moments like that to be used on the sphere as entertainment. And to be honest, I saw the funny side. I think most people did. We know that Checo wouldn't intentionally be wanting to give himself a thumbs down. But 2, if you don't want to have that situation, don't end up having a poor result. That's kind of the easiest way to solve a problem like that. So it's been a really tough run of form for Checo. And I think there's been a lot of talk again in this weekend where mainly the question is, how are Red Bull continuing with this? And this is coming from even Red Bull members. They're like, if you're looking for a weak link in terms of results, they're not going to get in that constructors fight with just one car. And they're fighting against teams that have such quality coming from both drivers, and Checo's not been able to produce it for most now. It really does seem strange that they hadn't made a change. From what I've heard, it's because of the cost of that change for the new contract he's had. And it could well be that he's there for a bit longer. But the one thing that does do is buy Checo time to prove he can turn it around. But it's been so slow coming. And it's painful to watch because we know he's a better driver than that. But he's not able to do it in that Red Bull environment anymore.
I know. That's really a good point. It is painful to watch because, Checo has been – it was so exciting when he came to Red Bull, right? It was almost like he was kind of towards the end of his career almost. And when he came to Red Bull, you thought this is going to be exciting, and he's had some good time, but this year has just been painful. But hey, Chris, I want to talk about something else. We haven't mentioned the new race director because the surprise that Niels Wittich was stepping down and Marquez stepping in as race director. And we've talked about it on other shows, what a crazy moment to start. But I was looking at the way the drivers were talking about the first meeting with him, and they were actually very optimistic about this new race director.
Yeah, they were. They were very pleased with the discussions they had. They came out of their meeting with the race director, the driver briefing, and they had feedback. They said that we would like to change this, we would like to change that. It basically related to having track limits at Turn 4. They felt that was unnecessary on the outside of Turn 4. And they also were saying that we can't see the pit entry line very clearly. We have both Williams drivers actually noted in practice for crossing that pit entry line. And the driver said, look, with the angle and these lights, these markings are not clear enough for us. So can you change that? Can you improve that? They showed up the next day and both changes have been implemented already. And it did suggest that that's not been the case in the past. Now, the flip side, there's always a few people that will say, well, careful what you wish for, is that then do the drivers have this feeling that, well, what we asked for, we're going to get? And sometimes, and I know Jenson Button was someone who admitted this when he retired, he said sometimes the drivers are the worst people to listen to because they've got their own wants and desires. And if you listen to them when it came to designing race cars, they'd get something that's brilliant to drive. They'd have loads of fun, but there'd be no overtaking. There'd be loads of downforce, loads of grip, and you would never get overtaking. So you have to actually ignore them at times. And there will be times that Rui Marquez has to ignore them. But this weekend clearly wasn't that time. He needed to get off on the right foot. And all the drivers spoke very positively about being listened to. So let's see if that continues. But he's going to have a big, big task on his hands, because he's going to have to deal with 3 races in a row with varying degrees of pressure in terms of what's on the line in the championship picture. But tonight, I mean, this is an amazing spectacle. The eyes of the world on Las Vegas again, on a street circuit where incidents, accidents, safety cars, red flags, all could easily happen. And he's probably going to have his hands full. So, I wish him luck. Let's put it that way.
Nice segue, Chris, because I put, as we are approaching the end of our show and getting ready for getting ready for the race, I was thinking about qualifying, and my notes here, I put anything can happen, and I've been cutting and pasting that throughout the weekend in my show doc, because we know it's Vegas and anything can happen. We've only got, what is that little run down to turn 1, about 200 meters or something like that, Chris? It's very short. And last year, I was just watching the replay of it. There was tons of activity. We started with Max Verstappen doing his famous come from second and push Leclerc wide to take the lead of the race and really to not give it up and win the race. But what are you expecting with that first turn 1 with only a couple hundred meters?
I'm expecting a mess, I won't lie. As you say, that was an aggressive Verstappen move. We could well see that from 5th place. With the way that the grid layout is, Lando Norris is actually on Verstappen's inside, so maybe he'll be trying to get down the inside if he gets a good start. But as I mentioned, with the tailwind that we've now got, and I'm now back in the paddock, so the other side of the big pit building, but essentially I'm parallel to the pit straight. And the wind was very noticeable on the pit straight, and it is back here too. Yeah, picking that braking zone in so much dirty air of other cars too is going to be difficult. Your tyres are cold, your brakes are cold. I think we could well see an incident at turn 1. And it will be that who gets caught up in that. Because don't forget as well, if Lando Norris gets caught up in one and is out of the race, the championship's over there and then. Yeah. Max Verstappen will be world champion. So, the tiniest thing could happen. Flip side, if Verstappen's caught in something and Norris isn't, then there's a chance for Norris to go and take some big points out of him and actually reignites it again. So I think it could be a crucial part of today's race, turn 1. But as we saw from last year, this is a place you can overtake. We had 99 overtakes in a dry race last year, the most of any race on the calendar. It was a thriller in that sense. And I think we'll get more of that because the tailwind into turn 1 means it's a headwind along the strip into turn 14, which is what Toto Wolff was saying was worrying him. And that means that you're going to have a big kind of gain if you are the following car and you're getting a slipstream because the car ahead is punching a nice big hole into that headwind for you.
You're so right, Chris. We could have, look, we've got the Mercedes on pole. We've got the Ferraris right there, and with Carlos Sainz and Leclerc both in position at 2 and 4, and you've got Max at in 5th, and he can easily be up there, and Lando right behind him. But you mentioned that about Lando because last year he crashed out really hard into the barriers, actually on lap 3. If that happens, you could have a real meltdown for McLaren because you would clearly lose the drivers' championship, but you could also drop down in the Constructors' Championship. And, McLaren had such momentum just a few races ago. And so it could really turn around dramatically in a bad way for McLaren if they don't get this right. But again, we just don't know. It's the total opposite of last year that at this point in the season where Max was just dominating and Red Bull. So we just don't know what's going to happen, Chris. And look, we're down to about a minute left, Chris. Well, let's get our predictions. I'll go first. How about that? I'm going to. I think Bob said that he was picking Carlos Sainz. I am going to go with George Russell. I know that's an easy pick. He's on pole, but they have looked so fast this weekend. I'm going to say Russell, Verstappen, and Leclerc for my podium, Chris.
That's not too far off what I was going with all week because I was talking down Mercedes' chances heading into qualifying. I told Christian Hugel I didn't think they'd stay there in quali, and Russell went and put it on pole, didn't he? So I went with Russell, Sainz, Norris earlier today when I was talking to ESPN. But then for some reason I thought, why not Pierre Gasly? He was talking himself up, his chances. Let's have a crazy race where Gasly wins it.
I love it, Chris. I almost put him on my podium too. All right, well, thanks, Chris Medland. Thanks, Bob Varsha. This has been Jon Massengale. We will be back after the race, but if you're listening, stay tuned because the race coming up right here from the BBC. We'll talk to you after the race.